afternoon, colleagues. We will begin now, and we'll wait to see if Mr. Don comes online as we go. But we have our witnesses before us right now from Baylis Medical, Mr. Frank Baylis, as well as Mr. Neil Godera, and from FTI Professional Grade, Mr. Rick Jameson. We'll begin with opening remarks from Mr. Baylis and Mr. Godera, and then we'll go to Mr. Jameson, and then we'll go to the question and answer. So, Mr. Baylis, for you and Mr. Godera, that was 7 minutes, please.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Jameson wants to speak first, if that's okay.
That would be okay if Mr. Jameson, and you can go ahead for 7 minutes.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and honorable members. I'm happy to provide information on how a Guelph company came to produce ventilators. I am the president of FTI Professional Grade Inc. We are the prime contractor for the delivery of 10,000 V4C 560 ventilators. To date, FTI has delivered 7,788, and we expect to complete our contract before the end of December. Pre-COVID, I am the co-founder, president, and CEO of ABS Friction and Ideal Brake Parts. We proudly manufacture Canadian-made brake pads, which we export worldwide. Every Ideal box contains a Canadian flag pin in it. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary in business. COVID-19 has required an extraordinary response from our country's manufacturers. In March, the federal government made a call to action and asked Canadians to help. I immediately realized this was an opportunity for me to step up and help the country. I was personally motivated to take action and help with the fight for two main reasons. The first, on March the 12th, I received an email from a family friend in Italy who told us about the total lockdown of the country. Doctors were making unbearable decisions about who would live and who would die. The lack of ventilators impacted the situation. The second reason was that I feared for vulnerable family members. On March 19th, I stepped away from my full-time responsibilities at ABS Friction and Ideal Brake Parts to co-found the Ventilators for Canadians Consortium. I put up a website to outline our purpose: to make ventilators. We had the energy, experience, and expertise to do the job. This was our moment to serve. At the very beginning, we looked at crowdfunding. We had access to the financial resources for licensing and the engineering talent. However, we had no medical quality system. A number of companies were identified, but two proven medical device manufacturers were shortlisted. After researching numerous options, we approached a UK company about a licensing collaboration. During that evaluation, we introduced ourselves to Baylis Medical to satisfy our requirement for a medical quality management system and facility. Manufacturing a Health Canada approved medical device is very complex. We determined that Baylis Medical was qualified to take on this project as our subcontractor. The UK design fell through because of supply chain concerns and the ventilator's suitability for COVID use. We had put together a very capable team and we pursued other designs. I reached out to the public service to discuss what we were doing. Soon after, we began the vetting process with the public service and presented our solutions to an expert panel. This was my first public contracting process with any government. On Saturday, April the 11th, Easter weekend, FTI signed a contract with Public Works to deliver 10,000 ventilators based on Medtronic's PB560 permissive license. This design has been used for over 10 years and is utilized to treat patients worldwide. Negotiations took place, and a contract between FTI and Baylis Medical was signed on Thursday, April 16th. Baylis Medical then began the process of submitting the required documentation to apply for regulatory approval based on the Health Canada Emergency Interim Order. We received Health Canada approval for the ventilator on Tuesday, June the 16th. We are the only consortia in the world that has successfully replicated, received regulatory approval, and manufactured the proven Medtronic PB560 ventilator. And that's the result of the collaboration between two Canadian companies, FTI and Baylis Medical. FTI's approach to utilize the Medtronic permissive license allowed us to reduce the time to get high quality ventilators to Canadians from 3 years to 3 months. Typically, it takes 3 years to develop, achieve regulatory approval, and manufacture a medical device. It took us only 3 months from contract signature on April 11th to first delivery to the Public Health Agency of Canada mid-July. Our ventilator is versatile. It has features and benefits to address acute and non-acute hospital care, long-term care, and in-home environments. We're extremely proud that FTI has delivered 7,788 ventilators to the Public Health Agency of Canada, so they're available for Canadians who need them. I would like to thank the inspiring group of people who've helped us from around the world, Medtronic for making its design available, and most importantly, the Public Health Agency of Canada, Health Canada, Public Works, and Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, and others from the government who I've surely missed, who have guided FTI through this process. I would like to recognize the honorable members of the committee and parliamentarians for their continued support of Canada's COVID-19 response. I would be pleased to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jameson. Now we'll move to Mr. Baylis and Mr. Godera.
As Rick Jameson said, in the spring of this year, a terrible, terrible situation was unraveling in Europe. People were dying because of lack of ventilators. And very soon after that, that same situation reproduced itself in the United States of America. Our neighbors just to the south, in New York State that touches Canada. People were dying and doctors were beside themselves of having to make decisions about who should be put on a ventilator and who unfortunately would not. And that's not a position doctors should be in. So when Mr. Jameson contacted us and asked us, would we be part of this consortium? Our answer was yes, absolutely. And today, Canadians can feel safe. We are not out of the COVID situation by any stretch, but at least they can feel safe in the knowledge that that situation that happened in Europe and that situation that happened in the United States, where people were left to die because of lack of access to a medical equipment, will not happen in Canada. We have played a small part of that role, but we're very, very proud of the role we played with ventilators for Canadians. And we thank Mr. Jameson for reaching out to us. La situation que nous avons vu dérouler en Europe.
The situation that we saw unfold in Europe, particularly in Italy, and which came here to North America in the United States, where people were dying because of a lack of ventilators. This is a situation we did not want to see reproduced in Canada. We wanted to be able to protect Canadians and Quebecers, knowing that the ventilators, if needed, would be there. Our agreement with ventilator for Canadians was the way that we were able to get there. Thank you.
You have another 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. My name is Neil Gadara. I'm the Vice President and General Manager of Baylis Medical's Design and Manufacturing Services Division. In that division, I'm responsible for the design, development, and manufacturing of complex medical devices typically used in the treatment of spinal pathologies. I also lead our involvement in the V4C 560 ventilator project. So my background is in biomedical engineering. I have overseen the design and development of over 100 medical devices across multiple medical disciplines. So before I speak about the ventilator, I would like to share a little bit about the history of Baylis Medical. Baylis Medical was founded in 1986 by Mrs. Gloria Baylis, a registered nurse. And since then, for over 30 years, Baylis has had a track record of developing and manufacturing leading medical devices in the fields of cardiology, radiology, cancer treatment, and spine pathologies. Currently, our devices are used to treat patients and improve patient care right around the world. Over the years, we have worked hard to develop a fully vertically integrated organization to support that endeavor. And what that means is that we have all the necessary capabilities from conceiving of a device, developing it, but also to getting the regulatory approvals and manufacturing them as well. In total, we are one of the largest medical device companies in Canada in the field of medical devices, and we also are one of the largest in advanced medical device manufacturing as well. And our products specifically are known for advancing the state of medicine in the areas where we operate, and also for being of exceptional quality. So typically, the devices we make at Baylis are highly complex systems. They are used in...
Ce sont des systèmes dont on se sert de différentes façons.
Engineering, basic science, and clinical care. As such, because of our background, our team has quite a comprehensive understanding of the activities required to bring a medical device to market towards improving patient care. And the part of the business that I oversee specifically deals with developing and manufacturing medical devices for other companies around the world. And inside that department, we develop very complex electrical and mechanical devices that are in fact very similar in complexity to a mechanical ventilator. So it's for those reasons that when Rick Jameson reached out to me and the Ventilators for Canadian Consortium and FTI, and they asked, would you support our efforts towards supplying ventilators to Canadians, of course, our gut reaction was immediately to say yes. What we knew then, and what has proven to be true, was that our existing structures, our expertise, and our experience, they align very closely with the technical requirements for building ventilators. So to realize that, what we had to do is we had to move a great deal of our resources over to this initiative. So starting in April, after we began, we moved a large portion of our engineering team, supply chain team, regulatory affairs, quality affairs, our physical and manufacturing operations, intellectual property, legal, and our human resources teams. All these folks were moved over to support the ventilator effort since mid-April. And then once we started manufacturing, our manufacturing teams have been working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week towards supplying the ventilators to FTI en route to the Government of Canada. So to date, as mentioned by FTI, we have supplied nearly 8,000 ventilators in support of Canada's COVID-19 efforts. And we're extremely proud to have played a role there. I would like to take a moment and just on behalf of the hundreds of employees of Baylis and the many teams around the world that have supported us in making this, we've had access to and talked to many frontline workers, and we are just completely moved and overwhelmed by their efforts to support Canadians and those that are suffering from COVID during this pandemic. And for what it's worth, we are very grateful for having this chance to serve our country at this time of need. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Gadara.
Thank you very much. The first member to question will be Mr. Paul Hus for 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jameson and Mr. Baylis, for your comments. But the question that we are seeking answers for today is this. there clearly was a type of cooperation, a collaboration in view of the $237 million to Baylis. And
we'll work on that for a second, Mr. Polhuis. Would you try the question again, and then that way our IT team can work on getting translation to Mr. Jameson.
Okay, on peut faire un...
Okay, should we do a test first, or do you just want me to begin again?
I did not.
Easy on the on floor or English.
Mr. Jameson, at the bottom of your screen, do you have should be an icon there with interpretation. Do you have it selected to English?
I see. I do not have it selected.
Okay.
So what do I have to do? Go to French?
Select English.
Press English. My apologies, folks.
Okay, give us a test now, Mr. Polhuis.
Donc, bonjour, Monsieur Jameson.
Hello, Mr. Jameson. Can you hear me now?
I will refund you the time. Go ahead and pose your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Welcome to our witnesses. Today, what we are looking at is this. We have an enormous amount of doubts surrounding the issuance of this $237 million contract. It's clear for many people. It's clear for us. Mr. Baylis is a former member of Parliament, Liberal member of Parliament. He found a way that we think of operating by going around and engaging a company that was created by Mr. Jameson. We're all Canadians. We all want to save our country, but $237 million belongs to the Canadian taxpayers. Mr. Baylis, when did you speak to Mr. Jameson the very first time?
Le processus, c'est que Mr. Jameson.
The process was that Mr. Jameson put this consortium in place, and there was someone who knew someone in our company. That person contacted the person in our country, but perhaps you could speak to Mr. Godera. Another person called Mr. Godera. That's how it started. And then Mr. Godera talked to Mr. Jameson. And then after that, they said, Mr. Godera asked me if we wanted to be involved in the consortium. And he gave my phone number to Mr. Jameson, and Mr. Jameson called me. Mr. Polhuis, on this point, you said that and I want to be very clear on this, because you said that I was trying to build a shell company. No, I didn't know Mr. Jameson. I'd never met him before in my life, and I knew no one in his consortium. They called. We are known in the area, in the field. A lot of people who work in a similar field know about us. And all they did was ask, can you help us? I want to say perhaps the 29th or the 30th of March, but I'm not really sure about the date. Yes, but Mr. Baylis, the date is actually comes right at the end of the time set aside for the call for tenders, the 31st rather of March, and PSPC was involved in that in terms of the tender. So there's a lot of millions of dollars and even billions of dollars that have been involved in transactions. Many Canadians have great difficulty understanding what's happening. We know that these ventilators, these V4C560s, they were on the market for 13,000, and you were selling them for 23,000. That comes to $100 million more expensive. How do you explain that to Canadians? Absolutely. We can answer your question with respect to the pricing. The way it worked was this, but I'm going to give Mr. Godera the floor because he's vice president of that particular department. So, Mr. Godera, if you would please continue.
Yeah, I'd be happy to explain exactly how we approach this. So our device is a replica of the Medtronic PB560 ventilator. And the way we approach is we price our ventilator to the same as what the Medtronic PB560, which is $10,000 US at the time. And that's what we started with. But the reality is what we're providing is more than the base ventilator because we had to accessorize and configure the ventilator for appropriate use in the COVID. And there's actually 3 separate areas which we had to account for. The first is that the ventilator that we provide had to be provided with many more accessories so that when it was delivered ultimately to a hospital and starting to be used on multiple patients, which is different than how the PB560 would be used, it'd be ready to go. So we provided 10 times the number of accessories. They're called exhalation blocks. We provided 10 times the number of inlet filters. We provided 6 times the number of oxygen inlet connectors. We specially configured the ventilator for appropriate settings for COVID. And additionally, we also set it up with appropriate settings that are appropriate for COVID patients. So that was bucket 1, which was to really flesh out that system so it's appropriate for those patients.
Merci. Merci.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you.
Related to the costs. So the second one, if I may, just to explain, because I know this is one question that's come up often. So the second area was that we had to establish a completely new manufacturing facility dedicated and specific for ventilator production. We had to hire 250 people, special tooling, equipment, components, and we also had to then secure a global supply chain. So we had those 2. And then the third one is that we had to account for the fact that during COVID, things were much different than obviously when the PB560 would be made beyond that. So there was major changes in shipping costs. We knew that.
Merci, Mr. Godera.
Thank you, Mr. Godera. I do apologize, but I do have to move on with the questioning. Mr. Jamieson, you are in a business that makes brake pads. How did you come to the idea of making ventilators?
Well, thank you for your question. It's exactly what I said in my opening introduction. We thought we could make ventilators. So our theory for Ventilators Canadians was to go license a ventilator. And I make auto parts every day, and we make a safety device. So first of all, in auto parts, making brakes, you have to stop a car at a very high speed. So the complexity of making a ventilator and meeting regulatory in the United States is actually quite similar. It's just a different way. You
Mr.
have recall
Jamieson,
legislation.
I'm sorry to interrupt you at committees. Time is always our enemy. And I gave you a few seconds more just so you could get some kind of answer in. And please do feel free to expand on your answer during another question from another member if you like. But I'm trying to arbitrate and be fair.
No problem, Mr. Sweet.
Yeah. Now on to Mr. Fergus for 6 minutes.
The trick is, Mr. Chair, is always to find that unmute button. So thank you very much. And thank you to the witnesses for coming here today. And my questions are going to be for Mr. Baylis in particular. But before I do, I'd just like to recognize that Mr. Baylis, on behalf of myself and certain my colleagues all around the table, we'd like to extend to you our condolences on the recent passing of your father a couple of weeks ago. So I'd just like to share that with you. Mr. Baylis, did you in any way try to influence the government to issue the contract for ventilators to Mr. Jamieson's group?
Thank you, Mr. Fergus, for your kind words about my dad. No, I know that it's been suggested in that I can state unequivocally here that I did not speak to people said I spoke to the Prime Minister. No, I did not speak to the Prime Minister. I did not speak to cabinet ministers to ask them or influence them for a contract. I did not speak to members of Parliament of any party. In fact, I didn't speak to anybody to try and influence them to give a contract to Baylis Medical or to Mr. Jamieson or to Ventilators for Canadians. I was not I was involved in one phone call that Mr. Jameson had set up, which had to do with the advancements that we needed to go secure the parts. That was my involvement with Mr. Jameson as he was negotiating and putting together this consortium. So I was not reaching out or doing any kind of backroom, as has been suggested, request to anyone to get me a contract or to get Mr. Jameson a contract or to get ventilators for Canadians or to get FTI. I did not speak to, in that light, I can say I didn't speak to anybody, whether in government or not.
When did you, and I appreciate that, and let me just build on that because in your answer, when did you first find out that Mr. Jameson's group had been awarded the contract for ventilators?
He called us on I think he got it on the 11th, I believe, January, March, April 11th, I believe. This was happening very fast, Mr. Fergus. It was a whirlwind of activities. He had kind of said that he was working on this and pushing forward. Those first few weeks, as you saw the tragedies unfolding around the world, and when we think about New York State, New York City, it's very close to our major cities.
Very much so.
And COVID did not know political barriers or that. So it was a rush and a very pressurized situation. I can tell you that.
Mr. Baylis, in spite of the recent passing of your father, I'm certain you were monitoring what was being said about you in the media or at this committee. I'm certain you noticed that the ethics commissioner had found no reason to investigate you. Can you explain why, apart from a political witch hunt, why you are here today?
Yeah, obviously, Mr. Fergus, it saddens me in a certain way that that this has happened. I understand that I'm a past member of parliament and things will be politicized, and that there's people that will see there's a political gain to be had by that. I understand that. I'm not naive. I can tell the Canadian people, and I can state unequivocally, I did not use any relationships to try and get any contract for anything. I've not done that. And not only that, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished. I'm very proud. There's been a number of statements, as you said, Mr. Fergus. First of all, there's been 14 contracts, not one or two, 14 separate contracts for ventilators and accessories. And Mr. Jameson's contract and FTI, ventilators for Canadian, is just one of 14. So this idea that it was single sourced, these are falsehoods that have been spread, if I could say that.
Mr. Baylis, one final question. As a former MP, you are aware that anything you say in this committee is protected by privilege. Is there anything that you would like to say to some of the members who have made what I characterize as outrageous statements about you, your company, and your partnership with Mr. Jameson?
No, I understand the political game. I think that what everybody should know and everybody should really feel good about is this is a wonderful coming together. This could not have been done without the work of Mr. Jameson and this consortium that provided logistics, that provided manpower, that provided procurement expertise. Really, I think people should see the wonderful thing of these people coming together of different stripes, different businesses, and I might even say different political inclinations. And I'll let Mr. Jameson explain that too. But that how we all came together. So maybe, Rick, I don't know if you want to mention something there too.
No, I think the only thing I would mention is that I did not know Mr. Baylis, number one. And number two, it never dawned on me that politics would ever enter into my relationships with my subcontractors. That's it. We were doing a job that we thought, and I can tell you, we worked 16 hours a day. And we had a huge team of people who were involved in this project. So I did not know who Mr. Baylis was. It was actually, I didn't know who Baylis Medical was. Despite the fact that these guys, this is a big company, I'd never heard of them before. I'm in automotive. They don't run in my circles. I don't know these people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, do I have any more time?
You've got 3 seconds, Mr. Fergus. Just enough to find find your mute button.
Thank you to all the witnesses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fergus, Mr. Jameson, and Mr. Bayless. Now we'll move on to Madame Goudreau. Pour 6 minutes, Madame.
6 minutes, Madame. Hello. Thank you. I'm very happy to meet with you today. I have a very simple question, but a question that requires some explanation on your part. First of all, to Mr. Jameson, earlier in your statement, you mentioned that you had contacted the public service, but I didn't hear who precisely was the person that you contacted. We understand the wish to save people. We understand these very praiseworthy motives, but who did you contact?
Are you asking me if I'm a lobbyist? Is that the question? Yeah, I'm not a lobbyist. I'm an auto parts manufacturer. This is the first time I've ever been involved in a government contract. And simply, we were working, our theory was we had three.
Je n'ai pas la traduction.
I'm afraid I don't hear the interpretation. I understand a little bit of English, but I realize that I didn't have the interpretation.
Yes, you didn't change the button on your screen, did you, Mr. Jameson? Mr. Jameson, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I can hear you fine, Mr. Sweet.
Mais la question.
But the question was a very simple one that I was asking. Who did you communicate with when you said, I contacted the public service? That is what I understood from the interpretation.
Like I said, I'm not a lobbyist. I wouldn't even know the first thing about it being a lobbyist. That's something that happens in Ottawa. It doesn't happen in Guelph. Okay? Lobbying the mayor is asking to get your road fixed.
Je comprends.
I certainly understand.
We're in full compliance with the procurement process. I reached out to the government, and I'm getting some echo here, in order to explain what the Ventilators Canadians was doing. And what we were trying to do was build a licensed ventilator. And that's why I told you in the opening statement that what we did was...
Oui, mais qui...
Yes, but who was the individual that you did contact?
I'm not sure I'm supposed to mention actual civil servants' names. I don't think that's fair.
Well, I'll ask you the question again later, but let me explain. I certainly understand that in business, and also we had this wish to save everybody insofar as possible, but where Mr. Bayless understood the lobbying rules, and they mention that for 5 years you cannot. And if you want to be as neutral and transparent as possible, you have to be whiter than the snow, than the falling snow. So in the last months, I wanted to know who you spoke to in the public service.
I'm happy to answer that in a different way. I can tell you I contacted the public service before I met Mr. Bayless, or before I even met Bayless Medical. That's the best answer. So we were reaching out to the government because we thought we were going to crowdsource these ventilators and give them to Canadians. And what happened was that I got some advice from a retired partner of one of the big accounting firms and said, this is government's responsibility. You're only going to if you crowdsource and it doesn't work out for you, people who've given you money won't be very happy. So we changed directions, and that's how.
Mais vous savez.
But you know that you can mention the name of the public servant that you spoke to. In all the committees, we've heard a lot of names because we want to be sure that the taxpayers' money, and you are one of them, is being properly used. Who did you speak to?
We spoke to a gentleman named Charles Vincent. And I have I can even tell you how I found Mr. Vincent. I knew one single politician who I thought might be able to get me to Ottawa. And I called the mayor of Stratford, who I personally know, Dan Matheson, and asked him if he knew anybody. And he said, I'm going to call up to Ottawa and see if we can get someone to talk to you. And I said I would be at my desk to 11 o'clock at night for the next 3 nights. And Mr. Charles Vincent called me back at 11:30 at night, and we talked till 1:30 in the morning, and I explained to him what I was trying to do. And the problem was, for me, was I felt that if we could raise a lot of money from the public, and I called specifically to ask the government the ethics question, we're at an ethics committee, of how it would look if private donors in Toronto who are willing to give me millions of dollars wanted those ventilators to go to Toronto hospitals. And the problem was we were Ventilators for Canadians, and we wanted to ask a senior civil servant how we might do that. And when he found out what we were doing...
C'est tout à fait légitime.
Yes, so it's quite legitimate. My last question for you, I know time's flying, but when you did deal with Mr. Bayliss, who knew how things work here because he had been in place here for some years. I'm a new member, and I know that before acting, you have to be sure. So I'm asking Mr. Bayliss the question now. What about the lobbying laws? Did you indicate to Mr. Jamieson that things were being done to be politically correct? I wasn't involved in all the work that Mr. Jamieson was doing. The question really was a manufacturer with standards to produce 1345s of the V4C. We all knew that there were things that had been set up in Public Health Canada that required compliance. And I can also say, Madame Gaudreau, that I was a member, but in the past. But the fact that I was a member in the past, he just became aware of that when it came out in the news. Well, I realize that one day I won't be a member anymore, but I know I'm a businesswoman, that I will not be able to do certain things for 5 years after that. I'm a businesswoman, so I will be very vigilant. And in an instance like this, where there are millions of dollars involved, my fellow citizens' money, I have difficulty believing.
Madame Gaudreau.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you, Madame Gaudreau.
On to Mr. Angus for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming this afternoon. And Frank, I'm very sorry to hear about your father. And, you know, we really miss you on this committee. I had to find a reason to bring you back. So welcome back to the committee that you served so well. And I am very interested on the issue of the ventilators. And I remember the crisis in March and the panic and the need to get funding out the door on these issues, particularly on ventilators. But we aren't the health committee. We're here at ethics. And the issue with ethics is coming down to making sure that we followed the rules. In 2008, Rahim Jaffer, who was a former member of parliament, public office holder, returned to try and get a deal with the government he served, and he was convicted for breaking the Lobbying Act. Mr. Bruce Carson was a former public office holder, and he was charged and convicted for coming back to the government he served. And they were offering good ideas. Mr. Jaffer's was green energy. Mr. Carson's was clean water for First Nations. So when your name came up, obviously, it raises questions. And so my question to you, Mr. Bayliss, is did you contact the ethics commissioner when you got involved in this? And what did he say?
Thank you for your kind words, Charlie, about my father. And if you're missing me another time in ethics, just give me a call, please.
Okay.
I'm happy to speak to you other than being summoned here. But no, I did not contact Mr. Dion. I think that he's a very competent man and he knows the rules. And I do believe I have been watching this. Obviously, my name's come up and I've been watching it. And I am aware, as Mr. Fergus pointed out, that, and as the rules state very clearly, that his job is to monitor the works of sitting members of parliament. His job is not to provide advice, nor is there any opportunity to provide advice for non-sitting members of parliament. Having said that, let me answer your question a different way. The world was going through a horrendous situation. We saw doctors crying that people were dying because they didn't have enough ventilators.
Sorry,
That was
no,
in
sorry,
Europe.
Frank.
Now,
I
let me
just
fin-
I
let
don't
me
have a
finish it
lot of
because
time here.
it's an ethical question.
I
Charlie.
get that. I
We
get that.
saw
I guess
when-
I'm just
so, but my
question
point is
about
this.
whether you talk to the ethics commissioner or not.
Yeah, my point is this about the ethics, Charlie, if I could, please, if I could. When Mr. Jameson called us up and they said, will you help? Will you help us? My answer then, ethically, was yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I didn't need to ask the ethics commissioner to vet that question.
No, I totally understand, Mr. Bayless. Your other former colleague, Jane Philpott, who I have enormous respect for, when she finished parliamentary life, went to work up in my region. And I think some of your Liberal colleagues made a complaint to Mr. Dion, and she wasn't allowed to work with some of the most impoverished First Nation communities because your Liberal colleague said under the rules she couldn't do that as a former office holder. So we just need to, I just trying to get a sense of how this came down. And the one thing I noticed is, I was surprised Minister Anand said she'd never heard of you. She said she couldn't pick you out of the crowd. I personally thought she's selling you really short. You were very popular in Parliament. You were very well known. And the reason I asked that is because when the documents came out about this contract, it wasn't like you were treated as a subcontractor. Baylis Medical was named in all the press releases. It was right up front. Do you see why these questions need to be asked so that we can reassure the public that the contracts that are awarded are being done, meeting all the ethical standards so that there aren't favors being given to people who are former office holders?
I believe it is the job of the opposition to be vigilant and to monitor these works and that. And this COVID crisis has seen an explosion of expenses, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the ethics committee or any other committee investigating things that might have come up. What I'll be honest, it had hit me personally. To see my name and being these falsehoods being stated about and lines being drawn that were not true, and some people mocking me in the House of Commons.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm a human being. I didn't appreciate that, but I try to stay above that and away from it. And I have great respect for the whole process and the people involved. So I don't see there's anything wrong with asking questions. I do think there's something wrong with casting dispersions and that. And, I think that you have here the people that did it. And I really would be wrong even to take any credit. It's really Mr. Jameson that did all this work. And then Mr. Godera that worked together under his guidance, under the guidance of Mr.
Fair
Jameson.
I have a very short little question, just in terms of, because you said you weren't involved in any of the negotiations with government, which I think would have been.
I was on one. I'll clarify.
Yeah,
I was
one
on
call.
one
Could
call.
you just clarify that for me? And that's all I need to know.
So
Thank you.
Sure. So what happened when the crisis hit? We have my partner and I. We took a decision. We said we don't want to lay anybody off. We don't want to lay anybody off. But we have 750 people, so we have an enormous payroll. So we started taking a lot of actions. Well, there's two people that got laid off. My partner and I actually took our salaries to zero. We cut expenses such as travel. That turned out to be a moot point because travel was cut for all kinds of reasons anyways. But we said no more travel. We said no more. We used to pay for people to take courses or that. We cut courses. We cut matching your RSPs. So we would say we could keep everybody. Then we remortgaged all our buildings. We extended our line of credit. We put a pile of money to say we're going to get through this thing together as a team. Then Mr. Jameson says, you got to start buying parts and you got to do this. I said, listen, we have some money, but we cannot risk our company. That money is there to get us through this COVID crisis. We need an advance. If you want us to go out and start doing all this work, buying the parts, and the parts were going like hotcakes and the prices were exploding, and that it was a crazy time. And we said, we cannot use this money, so we need an advancement.
Mr. Bayless, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I tried to give you, I thought that was an important question, and I tried to give you some extra time, but we're almost a full minute over.
Sorry.
So if you can maybe complete that answer.
Well, it's just that Mr. Jameson asked me to get on the phone. He set some call, and I don't know who was on the call. He said, explain to them why you need this advancement. That's it. And Mr. Godera calculated how much we needed.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Also, before we go to the next round, and it'll be Mr. Barrett who'll begin the next round, I wanted to just clear something up, to both for the witnesses' reputations and the committees. Mr. Bayless, I'm certain you used the word innocently, but you were invited to the committee. You weren't summoned or subpoenaed, because we have that capability, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that you came willingly, and we invited you, and you accepted that invitation. So I thought that would be clear for everybody. Now on to Mr. Barrett for 5 minutes.
Well, thanks very much, Chair, Mr. Bayless, Mr. Jamieson. Thanks for joining us today. My first question is for Mr. Jamieson. Why did you create FTI on the day that the tender was due?
FTI was created. Actually, it was in the process of being created long before this contract was set. The FTI name was actually going to be used for a brake pad business I was starting. And when we refer to the top quality brake pads as professional grade, FTI stood for First Line Technologies Incorporated Professional Grade. The company was available, and I used it. When you start a company, with a new business, it's always the advice of your lawyers and accountants to use a separate single-purpose entity. That was the reason the company was incorporated, because I wanted a March 31st year for the company.
Okay. And so the reason was the advice you received was to use a new company to engage this contract.
Correct.
Okay. So you provided us the name with one official with whom you communicated. Would you undertake to provide to the committee in writing, following your appearance, the names of other officials from the Government of Canada with whom you've communicated for the purpose of this contract?
Sure. I have no. Okay. Everybody I talked to my contract authority with PSPC. I've had two, Jeff Moore and Sandra Leslie, both competent civil servants.
Well, I appreciate that, sir. You expressed some hesitation to go through the names, and that's fine. And in order to give you the opportunity to provide a complete answer, if you're comfortable providing them, just sending a list to the clerk or the chair.
I didn't know I could, actually, so I'm happy to answer your question now if you like.
Okay.
So, as I said, my contract managers were Jeff Moore at PSPC, Michelle Muscoli, Joelle Paquette, and at FAC, I've had really good relationships with the technical authority, Peter Morellis, and the coordinator of the National Stockpile, whose name is Pascal St. Louis, all very competent people.
Terrific. Thank you. I have one last question for you before I have a couple of quick questions for Mr. Bayless. So FTI is the only company with no medical experience that obtained a contract. What made FTI different?
Actually, in terms of medical, I believe the other contracts didn't have medical experience either. There were no contracts, no one making ICU grade ventilators in Canada. What we did was a moonshot. We physically did this, as did the other companies, and we've delivered 7,788, and you can check to see that we've delivered by far the most ventilators of anyone.
Thank you very much.
Bar none.
Thank you for the answer, sir. Mr. Bayless, with respect to the names that Mr. Jamieson just offered, are you just on hearing them just now? Do you know any of those individuals?
Do you mean have I heard their names before, or do I know them, like, other than hearing their names?
Yeah, other than hearing their names. Did you have
No, I mean, Mr. Jamieson would tell me that I've heard these names before, but I don't know who they are or what. I mean, Mr. Jamieson would tell me what if something was fed back. More actually, Mr. Godera would be the one that he'd be feeding it back to. So I'd be getting it. They were the ones working together very adroitly, very tightly, if I could say that.
Okay, I have two more questions in just a minute to get through them, if I could. One is, has Baylis Medical had other contracts with the Government of Canada? And my other question is, just to clarify, you had said that you didn't advocate on behalf, I'm paraphrasing, advocate on your behalf or of VFC with ministers or members. Have you communicated with ministers or members during the pandemic? And if so, what was the general nature of those conversations?
So I prepared a list regarding the government contracts that you. So I assume that in 2011. In 2011.
Sorry, Mr. Baylis.
We had one with 2011.
If you could submit it in writing instead of reading it out, if you could submit it to the clerk, that would be fantastic. And then you could answer the last question. I think we just have a couple seconds left.
Sure. I just want to point out one thing too on these contracts. That there's two.
Sure.
There's two of them that we had prior. We had one after I left. We had two prior. They were both with the government of Prime Minister Harper, the Conservative government. And one was for developing a device, and the other one was a loan. We were opening a new factory, and we got a loan where you didn't have to pay what was really helpful. We were opening a new factory. Most loans, the banks have to start repaying the money right away.
Sure.
This one, we got the money, and we were able to then you didn't have to start paying back to a certain window of time, and that window of time.
As you're one of the people that knows that time is always our enemy. We've run out of time there. And
so, Chair, Chair, I just wondered, with respect to those last two questions, and I appreciate you respecting the committee's time. Through you, if you found it acceptable, I'd just like to request that perhaps Mr. Baylis be able to provide a response in writing to the committee, and then we can move on.
Yeah, it was my understanding the way Mr. Baylis had nodded that he was going to do that. And
yeah, I will.
Yeah, with respect to both my questions, conversations and contracts.
I can answer your other question right now too, if you want.
Actually, it would be better in writing, because now I need to go on to the next question, Mr. Baylis, if you would please. Now we'll go on to Mr. Sorbera for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome everyone. Mr. Baylis, Frank, nice to see you today. I know in our conversations, your father was a deep man of faith. And I know he was proud before, and I know he's very proud of you still, and is looking down on you and your family today. And God bless, and then obviously my condolences. I've listened to this testimony very, very closely, and I followed along the last few months in the House of Commons, the sort of smear and fishing expedition that some of my honorable colleagues who have been elected by their voters have made to you, Mr. Baylis. And I want to say, I actually want to sort of say sorry. I apologize. I apologize for them doing that. I'm not going to take responsibility, but I do apologize, because companies in Canada, from coast to coast to coast, whether it's here in Woodbridge Group, Mr. Jamieson, you're part of the auto part supplier base in Canada, the APMA, what they've done, stepping up, building masks, PPE, you name it. A lot of companies stood up here in Canada and said, we will be there. And that's what I want to say thank you to both of you gentlemen for doing and delivering almost 8,000 ventilators. So Canadians that have been impacted by COVID-19, so we could save lives and put in place the health capacity that we needed. And I want to say thank you. You are both entrepreneurs, directly and indirectly employ thousands of Canadians in several provinces in very well-paying, good benefit, great middle-class jobs. And I want to say thank you. And I want to encourage you to continue doing that, because entrepreneurs are at the heart of our economy and businesses are at the heart of the economy. Mr. Baylis, we know you were a former member of Parliament and one with a lot of integrity, a lot of intelligence, and we do miss you. Mr. Jamieson, just for full disclosure, you have in the past have donated to, my understanding, and I believe it's in a public record, to candidates in the past, and I just want to get on the record. You have donated to prior Conservative candidates in the past, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, and like I said, it never dawned on me that politics was to enter into any of my relationships with any subcontractors. It's the farthest thing from my mind.
Yes, and thank you for stating that, because at this moment in time where we're at as a country and battling COVID-19, it is so important for us to stay focused. And on the comment for Mr. Baylis, my understanding from what the Ethics Commissioner has disclosed, that there are no ongoing, or have there ever been any ongoing investigations or any correspondence with yourself, Mr. Baylis?
I know, Mr. Sorbera, and thank you for, again, about your kind words here. No, I learned when I I watched a little bit of the committee, and he brought my name up. That was the first that I ever knew or not about his even looking into it. But I assume then he was hearing things, so he looked into it and made his determination.
And quickly to both of you gentlemen, because Mr. Jamieson, in my riding, I have about 1.5 kilometers away from here is the headquarters of Martin Ria.
Yep.
About 2 kilometers down, they employ 700 workers in my riding at an auto parts factory. So I know your business very, very well. And I just curious, before COVID even broke out, before, was there any sort of relationship between Baylis Medical and your Jamieson, your companies?
No, not even close.
So you guys have come together. Mr. Baylis is a medical device company that's been around for decades.
That's right.
Not just for 5 or 6, for decades. And yourselves, you guys came together and brought expertise together to make ventilators. And today we have almost 8,000 ventilators to ensure and help Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
I'll just make one comment on that, Mr. Sabera.
Please.
What actually happened, and I can tell you this, it was a phenomenal time we were living in. I could call just about anybody. And normally when you talk to business people, they want an NDA. Nothing happens fast. And Canadians really were amazing. You call someone for help, they tell you what they could or couldn't do it. And often they tell you things that were normally trade secrets pretty darn quickly to try to move the project along. And I would just add, it's a funny thing for me because it's an unusual thing to hear your name being used in the House of Commons. It was like, well, that's amazing, So, anyways, it's just a different thing for a small business guy from Guelph, Ontario, an entrepreneur.
Well, Guelph is a hub for innovation, and we know how important the environment is there, and we have a lot of great employers down there, and a great MP that represents the riding. And look, here I had the Premier of Ontario in my riding at the Woodbridge Foam Corporation, congratulating him. Actually, he came up and picked up boxes and put it in his pickup truck to deliver. The Premier of Ontario at an auto part factory here in my riding, an auto part company just like yourselves. You've done the same thing that the Woodbridge Foam Group did. You stood up for Canadians. Now, my other colleagues on the other aisle may say there's something wrong with that. I don't. And I applaud you and I applaud Mr. Baylis for coming together and delivering almost 8,000 ventilators of this contract that was provided. I say thank you for myself and all Canadians.
Extra time, Mr. Cervera,
thank you, sir.
You're well over. Now we have Madame Goudreau for 2.5 minutes, Madame.
Yes, thank you. And my condolences, Mr. Baylis. It's very hard to lose your father. Mr. Baylis, I'd just like to come back to what we were talking about earlier. In life, there's nothing better than to take action to benefit other people. There are 2 ways, though, of acting. You can respond to an emergency, like putting out a fire, or planning quickly and managing a situation. But here I face some difficulty, and you'll have to help me out in terms of information. Perhaps the question also could be asked to Mr. Godera. When you started to work with Mr. Baylis, did you ask any questions? Because once you're no longer a member of Parliament, that responsibility follows you even after you have left. So did you ask or discuss anything about that? Because you don't want to discredit what you are doing. You want to be as neutral and exemplary as possible. I think that if you are in a hurry, sometimes that's where the cracks start to show. And you perhaps have to take the time to reflect. Mr. Godera, what did you know about Mr. Baylis? Did you ask him any questions about the requirements, business requirements in using public money in your contract?
I can answer that. So the reality is that Rick Jamieson and FTI had approached us to help support the ventilator program, and FTI was the one negotiating with the federal government. So they were, taking that on, and then we were a subcontractor to FTI. So in that relationship, my responsibility was to say, okay, what is it going to take to get these ventilators going? When is manufacturing going to start? When do we have to hire people? And put all the calculations, put all the planning together to make them. So we weren't dealing with the government. We were dealing with FTI. We were dealing with our internal teams. That's really what we were focused on at that time. And it wasn't really in the conversation that, at that time, what was Mr. Jamieson consulting with the government, that just wasn't part of our conversation.
That's all the time that we have. Now we'll move on to Mr. Angus.
Mais je comprends tout ça, mais en même temps,
I understand all that, but
your time's up. Sorry, I know 2.5 minutes goes very fast. Mr. Angus for 2.5 minutes.
Well, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Chair,
I thank you.
Excuse me. I'm really sorry to a point of order, just because we've had a couple of requests for written remarks. So, Chair, if it's all right that we inform the witnesses to please put in writing and submit any further information that they think is pertinent to their answers, because I know time is short. And I apologize to Mr. Angus.
Yeah, that's absolutely yes. Certainly any question that you were given that you couldn't finish and you want to make sure that's on record with the committee, please don't hesitate to send that in to the clerk and we'll add that to your remarks. Now on to Mr. Angus.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming and updating us on the work on the ventilators. And we're very pleased that you've actually managed to get to keep on track to get these ventilators out, because we're coming into the second wave and it's going to be frightening time, I think. Frank, I just gotta close on this because I think you'll appreciate it, because my Liberal colleagues, I really appreciate they've been defending auto plants and small workers and trashing everybody on my side of the hall and saying, why did we drag you through the mud here? Well, Frank, it's the way the negotiations went, right? I had a big, long list of people I wanted to bring, and they came to me and said, don't bring Rob Silver, Katie Telford's husband. We don't want him at committee. Oh, why is that? And then they said, we don't want to deal with the judges issue, the issue of bringing forward the partisan Liberal lists about judges' nominations. They said, bring Frank Baylis. So I said, oh, that's great. We'll bring Frank Baylis. So I think they enjoy you as much as I do. So when they ask why you're here, I got to say I was just trying to help out my Liberal colleagues. They really wanted you out of those other guys. So I'm going to go back and look at them and see. Maybe I should have invited them instead. But anyways, I hope you guys are doing well and staying safe. And thank you very much.
Point of order, Chair. I waited till Mr. Angus finished, but I thought it's in the routine proceeding that we discussed and agreed that when it comes to discussion of selection of witnesses, we do that in camera. And I know Mr. Angus just brought up a few names, but that was part of the discussion of I think I don't know. I just sounded to me it was part of the discussion of witness selection. So I just want to bring this up to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dong. I believe he was talking about private conversations. That's what I heard. Not conversations that happened in this committee.
Yeah, I don't believe it was in camera, so I don't think Mr. Dong does get a point of order. I know he's got, every time I speak, Frank, you'd love it. Every time I speak, Mr. Dong has a point of order. But if you were here, you wouldn't put up with that. But anyways, thank you so much for coming.
That's not true, Charlie.
All right.
I think the reverse is true.
All right, colleagues. Let me thank the witnesses, Mr. Baylis, Mr. Godera, Mr. Jamieson, for taking the time out of your day. Mr. Jamieson, you mentioned that you've been working 16 hours a day. We greatly appreciate that, and that means we've taken a substantial portion of your value from today. So I want to thank you for your investment here. Frank, on behalf of the entire committee, we want to share our sympathies and condolence to you for the loss of your father. I apologize. I did not begin with that, but I certainly want to end with that. And gentlemen, keep up the good work, and we're going to suspend now so that we can get our new witnesses in and start our second half.
Thank you.
Thank you.
the second half of our meeting, colleagues. We have before us now from the Department of Indigenous Services, Christiane Fox, Deputy Minister, as well as from the Department of Finance, Michelle Kovacevic, Assistant Deputy Minister, Federal Provincial Relations and Social Policy Branch. And so now I'll go to the witnesses. Ms. Fox, you have up to 7 minutes for your opening remarks.
Okay, thank you. I won't take up to 7 minutes, but I will deliver a few opening remarks, and I'll start in French and go into English. Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, for inviting me to the House of Commons Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. My name is Christiane Fox, and I am the Deputy Minister of Indigenous Services Canada and formerly the Deputy Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs at the Privy Council Office. Mr. Chair, I will provide short opening remarks, and I will give you some context to describe my role in the We Charity Youth Proposal. Prior to the last federal election, I was both the DM of Intergovernmental Affairs and Youth, where I supported the Prime Minister in his capacity as Minister of Youth on key youth files, including Canada's first ever youth policy and the Canada Service Corps, a youth service program. Following the election and appointment of the Cabinet, I remained responsible for intergovernmental affairs, but the youth responsibilities were transferred to Canadian Heritage, as was the Youth Secretariat.
I received a call from We Charity as they wanted to discuss their proposals for youth entrepreneurship and a youth service program, given my previous role as Deputy Minister of Youth for the federal government. I agreed to share this proposal with colleagues in various departments and to providing them with feedback based on my experience with the Canada Service Corps. I then received their proposal on April 22nd. Over the coming days, I shared their proposal with officials in departments. However, I did want to flag with the committee members that I did not have conversations with political staff from the Prime Minister's office or the Deputy Prime Minister's office regarding this proposal. During that week, I was also tracking the progress in the event we would need to share details with provinces and territories, something I did regularly on all COVID-19 support programs on our daily calls with provinces and territories. In the end, the only briefing that took place was on the overall students package announced on April 22nd. My next interaction on this file occurred on May 21st, when I was asked to join the briefing for the Prime Minister to provide him with insight based on my previous experience with ESDC's Canada Service Program. I shared at the briefing the following points for consideration. I noted that the single biggest challenge with the Canada Service Corps was ramping up the service opportunities, taking over a year to get to 1,800 opportunities across the country. In this context, I indicated that I did not think it would be feasible to create 20,000 opportunities in 4 months using the same program. I indicated that using an outside organization that was national in scope with a strong digital platform and previous experience in youth engagement and service could be a good option. I noted the importance of having bilingual opportunities. I indicated the focus that would be required to remove barriers to participation for underrepresented youth. And I indicated that any selected partner should work with other youth serving agencies to maximize youth participation. Following this briefing, I realized that I had not shared my feedback directly with We Charity, as I had been solely focused on my work on the COVID response, working with provinces and territories, and supporting the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister on the weekly meetings of First Ministers and the regular bilateral engagement that took place with jurisdictions. Therefore, to make sure to convey what I felt were important considerations, on May 22nd, I spoke to We Charity and shared my general thoughts on a potential youth service program, as I did at the briefing the previous day. Mr. Chair, this is the extent of my involvement in this program, and I'm happy to take questions from committee members. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those opening remarks. Now we'll go on to Ms. Kopachevich for 7 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Kovacevic. I am the ADM of Federal Provincial Relations and Social Policy at Finance Canada. I don't have opening remarks. I testified on We Charity in July before the Standing Committee on Finance. My opening remarks from that testimony and my testimony, of course, are available to members. And I'm just happy to get to it and take any questions you may have. Donc, je suis heureuse.
I'm very happy to move ahead to the questions. I'm willing to answer any question you have.
Thank you very much. We'll move right then to the first round, and that's a 6-minute round, and Mr. Barrett for 6 minutes.
Sir, I don't have audio for you, Chair. Did you just give me the floor?
Yes, I just gave you the floor, Mr. Barrett.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yep,
yes,
thanks.
Yes, 6 minutes, Mr. Barrett.
I would like to thank the witnesses for joining us today. My first question is for Ms. Fox. What was discussed at your April 20th meeting with We?
We Charity gave me a call to tell me that they had proposals with respect to a youth entrepreneurship program, as well as a service program. It was a fairly brief conversation. They indicated that given my role as kind of former DM of youth, that they were curious to see if I had any time to look at their proposal and to kind of discuss it. And so it was fairly high level. They gave a sort of a high level sort of overview of both proposals, and then followed up with an email a couple of days later.
Did you help them focus their proposal during the course of that meeting?
I did not, no.
Okay, and we understand that we met with finance officials on that same day. Did you communicate with anyone at finance about that meeting?
I did follow up with an email to some of my colleagues. Not on the 20th. On the 21st, I had an email exchange with finance to just say, this has come to my attention, because what I had told We was that all of the youth secretariat was now found at Canadian Heritage, that there was, a number of departments that may be interested in their proposal, given the entrepreneurship angle, given the youth service angle. And so what I had told We was that I would share that with colleagues, which I did. And then on April 21st, I did have an exchange with the Department of Finance with respect to the proposal.
Okay, thanks. It seems, based on those, the number of meetings they were having, that they had a clear desire to run the CSSG at that point. What was discussed at your April 23rd meeting when you briefed the Deputy PM?
So in the end, and thank you for the question, so what I did throughout the COVID pandemic, and what I continued to do throughout the summer, was very much focused on every time there was a government program that was rolling out, my responsibility was to make sure that I was sharing the details of that with provinces and territories ahead of a public announcement, to give them a heads up, to have an exchange about it. And then there was often follow-up after the fact. So over the course of the kind of between the 20th and the 23rd, I did a lot of work, but I did share it with different departments. And on the 22nd, I briefed provinces and territories on the student program announcement, but not in detail on the We proposal. I thought that perhaps we would need to brief on the We proposal at some stage, which is why I wanted to stay informed. But in the end, on April 23rd, ahead of the First Minister's meeting, we did not talk about the We proposal. And therefore, we briefed on the other elements of the First Minister's meeting and not on the We proposal specifically.
Okay. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
When you were the PM's deputy for youth, did you have any dealings with the We organization?
I did, not a lot, but I did. I had dealings with a number of youth organizations across the country, and in part because over my time as Deputy Minister of Youth, we did two, I think, major projects. One was with respect to the Canada Service program, which in fact we wasn't part of our group of organizations that delivered the program. We had 4-H, we had the YMCA, so there were a number of organizations. But when we launched our youth policy engagement sessions, we worked with a lot of youth organizations. So for instance, the Students' Commission ran the engagement process because we really didn't want to have the federal government be sort of the lead on engaging young people. We really wanted to take a different approach. So I did work with WE. I found out about kind of what they did, how they managed youth engagement, and we did have when we launched our youth policy, we organized the youth summit, and that would have been May 2019. And we used some of the WE youth facilitators to manage the breakout sessions of our youth discussion points on the key elements of the policy. And so there was WE staff that was engaged to come. And I did visit their Global Learning Center at one stage when I did a visit to Toronto, and I visited with a number of youth organizations, and that was one that I visited at the time.
Okay, did you discuss WE or their projects with anyone in the Prime Minister's office? And my second question is, were you aware of the ties between members of the Trudeau family and the WE organization, specifically speaking Jebs?
So in the end, I did not brief members of the Prime Minister's office or the Deputy Prime Minister's office on the WE proposal. And, you know, in terms of the relationships, I think it's the WE organization has a number of relationships with figures across the country, including political staff. I did not know the details of those relationships in my role as Deputy Minister of Youth, no.
Okay, thanks very much. Ms. Kovacevic, in a May 7th email thread between you and Ms. Wernick, you were discussing increasing costs for WE to administer the CSSG. You described the rising costs by saying, money, meh, no problem. And I have to ask if that was kind of the culture or the train of thought with respect to pandemic spending.
Thanks for the question. So firstly, that was absolutely not and continues not to be at all anybody's thinking with respect to pandemic spending. The money meh comment that you mentioned was literally, and my emails are all public. You know that I'm casual and very colloquial in my speech. It was a joke between peers. I might emphasize as well that in my colleague Rachel's email to me, when she talks about a distribution change, it is still within the $900 million that was approved by the minister and the prime minister in the set aside from the April 22nd announcement. So in fact, there was no more money at all. What she was talking to me about was entirely in scope within that $900 million.
I wanted to give you the opportunity,
which is a remarkable sum of money.
We're quite over it, but I felt that you needed the opportunity to answer that question. Now we'll move on to the next questioner will be Madame Latanzio for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll start with a few questions for Mrs. Fox. Mrs. Fox, there's been a lot of conjuncture from the opposition, both from members who have served in government previously and those who have not. A lot of the questions seem to resolve around the phrase "in normal practice" or "is this how decisions are typically made?" However, I think that my colleagues forget that back in March through May, we were not operating as per usual times or business as usual or commonplace. Can you enlighten this committee about how there was nothing normal or commonplace and how the government had to operate during the pandemic lockdown?
Thank you very much for the question. I think that I can definitely speak to my experience working as the Deputy Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs during that period of time. It was extremely intense. I've been in government since 2002, and I probably have never lived something as intense as I did during that time. We needed to be responsive to the very real health and security issues that the country was facing. We were definitely trying to respond in real time. And in my role as Deputy Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, what I took extremely seriously is that the important communications flow between myself and my colleagues in provinces and territories. And so for months on end, every single day we held calls, and they were not easy calls at times, and they were filled with challenges, and we had to be creative and solutions oriented, and we had to work within departments across the federal government, but also with our provincial colleagues who had the same realities across their provincial or territorial departments. And so it was extremely intense. I think we went 7 days a week for months. And then when the summer months sort of started picking up, we did see a little bit of a fall in the case count. However, we then began negotiating the Safe Restart Agreement with provinces and territories, which kind of created its own intense negotiations and work. And now I would say at Indigenous Services Canada, the team is being responsive and nimble to respond to the cases that we're seeing in First Nations across this country and in Inuit communities as well. And so I would agree that it was pretty unprecedented times, and it took a lot of dedication and hard work to get through very difficult issues.
Okay, so to continue on in terms of communicating with the public, with various stakeholders, then my question really is, was it not ordinary for stakeholders to contact you, and to seek a meeting or to pitch potential programs in the middle of a pandemic?
Yes, absolutely. I think that, different stakeholders were contacting us for various reasons. It could be because there was an offer to help, or it could be because they had a particular issue within their sector or their industry or their company. And so there was a lot of outreach and a lot of two-way engagement between public servants and outside organizations to be able to come up with solutions to these very real issues that the country was facing.
And would you say that the We Charity was one of those?
Yes, I think that they contacted me because of their proposal, because of my experience with the Canada Service Program, and because of the importance of youth service and what youth were facing in the middle of a pandemic. And so how could we be creative in that moment to be able to give opportunities? And so I had worked a lot on the Canada Service Program. I knew a lot about how the pilots had gone in various parts of the country using different organizations. And I think that although I can't speak to their motivations, I think that was part of our role, is to try to kind of find solutions and come up with innovative ways to respond to the COVID challenges.
Thank you. My next questions are for Mrs. Kovacevic. Mrs. Kovacevic, consultation with stakeholders, including them lobbying, in quotation marks, with government, often has a negative connotation. However, if you were not able to consult stakeholders, or stakeholders were not able to talk to the government, what would this mean for the policy development process? Some might conclude that it would just be stagnant. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I would say, I mean, I can't speculate and talk for other departments and their experiences, but I can tell you that in normal times and even in COVID times, when you're elucidating a new program or a new policy, it is very, very normal that there are a number of perspectives that are brought into consideration. And that includes, research that perhaps the Department of Finance will do or the department will do. That will be opinions of minister's office and exempt staff. That will be people from the outside, leaders in thought. And quite frankly, all of those are brought into bear. But the advice that we will decide on, certainly, myself, when I send something up the line to my deputy and my ministers, takes all that into account, and the advice that I give is my advice.
Okay. We're going to pursue that in terms of advice. So the following question is, had there been a Conservative government or an NDP government earlier this year, would the idea of a student service grant, in the way it was presented, would you have taken the same position and same approach as you did with the current government?
I can't speculate on other governments, but certainly the actions that I and my team would have taken in terms of considerations, policy, a financing decision, what makes sense, what are the needs of Canadians, is there a vehicle to deliver it, and how much would it cost, would be exactly the same irrespective of government.
So your answer
Thank
is
you very much,
your
Madam
recommendation.
Latanzio.
Thank you.
It's all the time that we have. Now
Thank you.
we'll move on to Madame Goudreau for 6.
Madame Goudreau, 6 minutes. Yes, good afternoon, ladies. We're very happy to have you with us today. 6 minutes. I have so many questions to ask. I revisited, because I was there, Ms. Kovacevic, when I looked back on the minutes of July 22nd last. I remember that you talked a lot about advice. Did you check the lobbyist register? Can we be sure that there is no appearance of conflict, no concession with the government? And is that the type of advice that you were offering the minister and the prime minister?
Merci pour votre question.
Thank you for your question, but I will answer in English. I do apologize.
With respect to whether I provided any advice with respect to lobbying to my minister, no, I believe it is the public holder's duties to address that, not my duty. And with respect to anything else relating to lobbying, again, it is the public office holder's responsibility to address that, and perhaps their office, not mine.
Okay. D'accord.
Okay. Now my question is for Ms. Fox. Earlier, you said that on April 20th, you had a communication with We Charity, but I didn't really grasp the name of the person that you spoke to there at We Charity on April the 20th. Yes, I can confirm that I spoke to Craig Kielburger and Sofia Marquez. Sofia, did Sofia Marquez, can you validate who Sofia Marquez is? No. It's not up to us to verify this in terms of lobbying. Now, I have a question for you. Well, earlier, it wasn't clear to me what the communication was for you, Ms. Fox, on April the 20th, because in actual fact, you had communicated in the past with them. You were aware and you knew the organization. Can you tell me specifically when? Yes, of course, I knew the organization as Deputy Minister for Youth, but on April 20, they phoned me to say that they had 2 proposals in mind. The first was for a social entrepreneurship program. Yes. And one that was Canada Service Corps oriented. And this is what they wanted to share, a copy of their proposal. Did they ask you if the proposal could be held up if there was a need for a proposal of this kind during the pandemic? There were people during the pandemic who reacted very quickly trying to save people's lives. Did you ask yourself questions about what could be happening? Well, in the context of the conversation that he had with me, it was really to see, I think there is a need. I think there is something that could be done for youth. He had already prepared a proposal for the Canada Service Corps, but it it really, we know that you have worked on programs. Perhaps you have ideas to share. You have experience. Well, can we presuppose this? Say Sophie Gregoire and Justin Trudeau had some very close ties with the organization, correct? Well, any type of relations between the organization and Canadians or politicians, I did not have any details about that. I had no details about a personal relationship. I had the details about the organization, what they did for youth. I understood the outreach rather that they were involved in. And that is what I looked at, particularly in the context of youth. When you look at the impact that they had throughout the country at the school level, they were very well known. Yes, I am going to ask Ms. Kovacevic this question with respect to We Charity's capacities. What was the role? What was the type of precaution that you would have to bring forward in terms of a contribution? What is the rule for vigilance before you pay money out?
Thanks for the question. So I should be clear that the Department of Finance and myself certainly had nothing to do with the actual contribution agreement. We have something to do with the funding decision up front, the $900 million provision for which the ESDC minister had to return to cabinet. With respect to your question, Madame, on what are the rules to follow for any contribution agreement, there are very clear guidelines and policies set by the Treasury Board Secretariat on grants and contributions on everything that needs to be followed. And I trust that my colleagues at ESDC would have been abiding by those policies for all of us.
I don't want to miss this. In the rules, do the rules talk about the scope of the services offered? Should they be coast to coast to coast when they don't have representation in Quebec?
That is probably not something that would be in the guiding G's and C's policies. That would be something to probably ask whoever put the contribution agreement together.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Madame Goudreau, now we're on to Mr. Angus for 6 minutes.
Merci.
Fox and Madame Kovacevic for coming today. I want to ask Madame Kovacevic about April 10th. Craig Kielburger writes personally to Bill Morneau. Hey, Bill. Hope this finds you, Nancy, Henry, Claire, Edward, and Grace enjoying some well-deserved downtime. And then he pitches this $12 million project. So he pitches it directly to the minister. And 11 days later, it gets approved. Isn't that an extraordinarily short time to approve a project of this nature?
Is that for me, sir?
Yes.
Okay, starting from the top, I was only made aware of Mr. Kielburger's email to the minister when all the emails were revealed as part of our commitment to the Standing Department of Finance. In terms of when the proposal was approved, remember, I would remind committee members that on the date of the announcement of the student package, the $9 billion, of which this $900 million Canada Student Service Grant was a part, there was no approval by the Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance for anything related to WE. The approval was strictly setting aside $900 million, a high-level announcement, and a direction to the minister responsible at ESDC to return with the proposal.
Okay.
That's all I can speak to.
That's interesting because on April 21st, in the Finance Minister's Annex 4, under its headline, Minister of Finance Decision, Bill Morneau allocates $900 million for the CSSG, but also $12 million. It says, in addition, the minister decides to provide up to $12 million to Employment and Social Development Canada to support the We Social Entrepreneurship. So how is it you didn't know that Minister Morneau had just approved $12 million? This is 11 days that this project is on his desk. to being actually in a government binder. That's a really, really short turnaround time, don't you think?
Let me correct the record. The Minister of Finance verbally approved what I just mentioned, the $900 million set aside and the direction for the ESDC Minister return. He did not approve anything related to we, neither did the Prime Minister at this juncture. This paper that you're looking at in Annex 4 was what we in the department had put together, which he never signed. We only received a verbal approval on the first two things.
Yeah, I saw that. It says Annex 4, he didn't sign, but he wrote okay. So is that how business is done? Because I see that the 912 million is referenced by the Prime Minister. They don't just refer to 900, they refer to 912 million. And I ask this question because this social entrepreneurship program had nothing to do with the pandemic. It may have been a crisis financing for the Kielburger operation, but the social entrepreneurship was not a response to the pandemic. So the fact that in his binder, he signed off on this issue, I find is really extraordinary, because you yourself referred to Minister Morneau's relationship with the Kielburgers as besties. It seems to me that something was going wrong here when 912 million is listed as having been approved. Was it approved verbally only? How is that credible?
Two things there. So I certainly did not characterize Minister Morneau's relationship with the Kielburgers as besties. I'm happy to speak to that email if you like, but that is absolutely not what I said. And again, I iterate that Minister Morneau and the Prime Minister, in advance of the April 26th announcement, did not sign off on anything related to we. What I can tell you, sir, is that in my briefing to Minister Morneau on the 21st, where he verbally agreed on the 900 million and he verbally agreed on ESDC Minister to return, because we had attached the $12 million proposal to the briefing note without any information, I had raised the specter of, if we wanted to get out fast, this organization might be able to have some immediate placements while the Minister of ESDC takes, a few more days and weeks to conceive a design and return to cabinet. The minister did not agree to it at that point in time.
Okay, but the minister was the one who received it. He received it from Craig Kielburger, someone who hired his daughter, someone who had flown him around the world, and it's listed in there that he's approved it. I'm concerned, Madame, because on April 17th, Minister Chagger meets with Craig Kielburger and Sofia Marquez, and they are briefed at that time about the details. Minister Chagger says they aren't, but according to Sofia Marquez's notes, they were given some key details. My concern is that because they had such a close relationship, maybe other organizations were not considered. For example, the very next day, you tell your colleagues not to call Shopify because EDSC has a better way. Well, that's the day after the meeting with Craig Kielburger. April 19th, Madame Warnock sends an urgent email to Craig Kielburger, and then she debriefs your department. And then that Monday, within 3 days, that Monday, there's already a meeting with the Kielburgers on the Kielburger plan, and nobody else. Shopify is not involved. YMCA is not involved. All the names that we've been heard are not involved. It is only from that moment on, it's the Kielburgers. And I'm not blaming you. I just think that the desire to satisfy a government that was so close to the Kielburgers, other decisions weren't checked out. For example, Shopify. Why were they dropped?
So I would say, sir, once again, the 912 million that you referenced was a mistake in the communications background. It is still $900 million. No we proposal was approved by the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance at that point. With respect to why or not other organizations, including Shopify, you will see very fluid in my emails over a period of 10 days. In fact, we went through many potential organizations as we're trying to land both a design and the potential delivery partner.
But none of them were spoken to. Nobody was spoken to, only the Kielburgers.
We've run out of time on that round.
Thank you.
We'll need to move to the second round now, and this is a 5-minute round. Mr. Poilievre.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. To start with, my question is for Madame Fox. Was the Deputy Prime Minister ever briefed on the proposed Canada Student Service Grant and the awarding of that project to the We Charity?
She was not briefed by me, no.
All right. How is it possible that there are numerous points of evidentiary confirmation that she was briefed in the earlier package we received, including an email from Mr. Kielburger, which says that you were planning to brief the Deputy Prime Minister?
So I can't speak to emails that I didn't draft. I think what I can say is that my role was to be prepared to brief on everything and anything during the COVID period. And at times we got through, a number of files, and at times we didn't. So I always prepared in the event this proposal were to move fast, that I would be knowledgeable enough to be able to brief. But in the end, we did not brief on this particular proposal.
But you do confirm that the package of documents that the committee received on this scandal, that there are two references to a briefing to the Deputy Prime Minister. One email indicates the briefing would have happened on April 23rd by the Deputy Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, which I presume is you. And second, there is an April 20th email that you authored that suggests that the We Charity was working with the offices of the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister. How could those documentary proof points suggest that there was a briefing of the Deputy Prime Minister if in fact it didn't happen?
Well, I think thank you for the question. I think that I always had to be prepared, and therefore, I always had to indicate and be ready to brief her on anything, because things moved extremely quickly. And I always wanted to make sure that the Deputy Prime Minister, the Prime Minister, they were prepared for any engagement that they would have with the Premier. And therefore, on any package that went forward from the federal government, I really took it to heart to be prepared.
So but
and in the end, I did not.
No, if I could, you've gone way over and you're way off the question. The question was whether or not she was briefed. You're now claiming she wasn't, even though there's documentary evidence that she was. Maybe that riddle will solve itself some point, but you have not explained how it came to be in the first place. So I will move on to Madam Kavokovic. Was the $500 million grant to the We Charity approved by the Treasury Board?
I don't believe it got to the Treasury Board stage. We certainly had a funding decision. So the Minister of Finance and the Prime, that the next phase, of course, would be for the ESDC Minister to develop a contribution agreement. And that's what goes to the Treasury Board.
Well, of course, but there was a contribution agreement. It was signed by the government. The money was transacted to the We Charity, all of which would have required Treasury Board approval, as you just correctly pointed out. So my question was, yes or no, was there approval by the Treasury Board before the money went out?
I'm not sure, but I would have to confirm, but it sounds like it must in fact have been the case.
It must have been the case the Treasury Board would have signed off on this. Are you aware that Treasury Board officials reviewed the proposal and came to the conclusion that there was no evidence that, and I'm quoting now, ESD, the department that negotiated this contribution agreement, has not provided evidence to suggest that We Charities possess the capacity to undertake this work? Are you aware of that?
I am aware of it because I've been reading it in all the documents that were produced for FINA. So I am aware of it now.
Okay, but would you not have asked whether or not Treasury Board had done due diligence to find out if We Charity could deliver this program before you worked towards this grant?
I believe that Treasury Board, Secretariat, ESDC were asking the right questions that needed to be asked prior to giving their advice.
I understand that, but it turns out Treasury Board officials say that We Charity wasn't even capable of delivering this program, or at least there was no evidence that it could. Did you know that?
I did not know that at the time.
Right. Okay. So you and other members of the government have claimed that only We Charity could do this. Now we find out from the Treasury Board officials that, in fact, that We Charity could not deliver this program. It sounds to me like your decision to move forward with this was not based on due diligence, but based on the relationship, the cozy relationship between your minister and this organization. You said in an email, May 7th, that We Charity is connecting with my minister's office. They are all besties. Presume that means best friends. You were aware that the We Charity was best friends.
I think,
okay, I'll
the magnitude
wrap up.
Of this question, I'm going to give Madam.
I'll wrap up in 3 seconds. You were aware that the minister's office was besties with We Charity, but you went ahead, and that's why you went ahead to give this money, even though Treasury Board said We
Chair,
Charity.
I'm sorry. Point of order. That's more than 3 seconds.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Shanahan. I was just speaking at the same time you were, Madam Kovacevic. because of the magnitude of this question, I'll allow you to answer.
Oh, thank you. So, Mr. Poilievre, with respect to Treasury Board Secretariat and their interpretation and assumptions and whatever, I think it's best, obviously, I should not speculate. You should ask TBS. With respect to my email that you referenced, I would like to explain to the committee that, like I've said previously, my language is very casual. At this point in time, I am aware, as is in my previous testimony, that my minister's office had engaged with We Charity, and I am casually calling them besties, referencing simply that there is engagement with the charity.
Thank you very much. We'll
You're
now
welcome.
move on to Mr. Dong for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to thank both public servants for accepting our invitation and be here at the committee answering some important questions. I want to go with Ms. Kovacek. That's the best I can do. I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong. So, Ms. Kovacek, how many times have you appeared before a parliamentary committee?
In my career?
No, responding in a recent matter of with regard to We Charity.
Oh, this is the second time, sir.
Okay. In those times, have you ever failed to tell the truth?
No, sir. Always tell the truth.
Great. Have you ever knowingly misrepresented facts?
Certainly not intentionally.
Have you ever been uncooperative or obstructed the proceeding of a committee?
Never.
Okay. Let's switch gear a bit. Prior to April 22nd, when the Prime Minister announced the CSSG program, how many conversations did you have with Representative at We?
I had one conversation, a phone conversation on April the 24th with me, my colleague at ESDC, Mr. Kielberger, and Sophia Marquez.
Great. And prior to April 22nd's announcement, how many different proposals did We Charity send to you on student program?
To me directly, none. I only obtained the proposals from either ESDC or my minister's office.
Great. How many times did either minister or his staff instructed you to choose We Charity for the administration of CSSG program?
Nobody at any time instructed me to do any choosing of a charity. We carefully and thoughtfully came to the decision in the end that We Charity was the best place organization to deliver in COVID times in the very, very tight time frame what the ambitious scope of desire was.
Okay. I know my colleagues on the other side may be a bit of confused on this point, so I want to clarify for the record. Did official at the ESDC make the recommendations to Minister Chagger that the government enter into a contribution agreement with We Charity?
I mean, that is a question for ESDC, but yes, I do know that that is the case.
Thank you. Now I'll move on to Ms. Fox. Ms. Fox, just following up on some previous questions, who would you know? Who would know better if you debriefed the the Deputy Prime Minister, you or the Kilburgers?
I would know better.
Thank you. Ms. Fox, is it out of the ordinary for stakeholders to contact you unsolicited to seek a meeting or to pitch potential programs?
No, it's not out of the ordinary.
Is it odd for the Deputy Minister, who is no longer responsible for a file, to be consulted by the new DM or officials?
No, it's not. It's not odd. You know, I had worked with them in the past. I had extensive knowledge of the Canada Service Corps, and as a public servant, I try to be helpful. And if that means connecting people with the right people in government, then that's something that I try to do.
Okay, thank you. And overall, you were responsible for the youth file, and for how long?
I was appointed as Deputy Minister of Youth in 2017, both for youth and intergovernmental affairs. So from 2017 to 2019, I had both portfolios. And then following the election of 2019, I only kept the intergovernmental affairs portfolio.
So is it safe to say that you had a long-standing relationship with the youth stakeholders?
Yes, a number of them.
And you wouldn't be out of ordinary for a public servant to have contact and a professional report with stakeholders that they deal with on a regular basis?
No, in fact, I think it is helpful to engage directly. And as Deputy Minister of Youth, not only did I engage with youth serving organizations, but I engaged directly with youth to try to really inform the work that we did in government. And that meant working with several organizations. For instance, I worked with Right to Play, and I went up to Attawapiskat to run basketball clinics for youth to be able to connect with them in a very different way than I would in an Ottawa boardroom. And I took that to heart as Deputy Minister of Youth.
Thank you. And I'll ask the same question I asked Mr. Kovacevic. Who recommended the government entry into a contribution agreement with We Charity?
So nobody made that recommendation to me. I think ESDC was responsible for the program, and they would have made the recommendation to their minister. I was not involved in that.
Thank you very much. Chair, that's all my questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dong. Now we have these two very quick rounds coming up, and that'll be the end. We're at 3 o'clock right now, but we did start a little late. So Madame Gaudreau for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is going to be very simple, and it's intended for both of you. I know it's a lot to ask of you, but considering that the Commissioner's report is going to be made available in coming weeks, not in coming years, you can see that things are moving along very quickly. There was some information that was available, other not. Looking at that, and we all know what the issue here is to save the appearance, preserve the appearance of conflict of interest. And there was no grant, no actual grant that occurred. And there could have been had some prudent measures taken to be able to prevent this. So in your areas of expertise, both of you, I want to hear what you have to say. With this new information that you have today, what would be the principal recommendations that you would make so that this would never happen again in the future?
Oui, je peux me lancer première.
I'll start. I think it's always important in our career to stand and look back and weigh what has been done. As public servants, we all want to learn and to improve the work that we do. And when I think of the pandemic, really, I think we should have some hindsight here. But, well, it's difficult to answer your question because while I can tell the committee today that people are working very hard, they work well, they particularly during a pandemic, the whole team works so very hard, and I'm terribly proud of my whole team. Once we get out of the pandemic, perhaps we should take some time to think things over. What could we have done better? And that's the way we could. Yes, but this would be a report that would be very, very relevant for us as members of Parliament and everyone. Ms. Kovacevic.
Thank you. I guess I can only answer that question with respect to my roles and responsibilities in finance. And so the contribution agreement is the Department of ESDC. I have the Department of Finance, has nothing to do with that. Only involved insofar as the funding agreement and the authority, obviously, that followed. I guess I agree with my colleague, Deputy Fox, that there are always things to learn when you look back retrospectively. My sense, just having lived in the 8 months or so and delivering so many services so rapidly to Canadians in this unprecedented time, is that speed is always an issue. The need to get things out the door quickly. Governments and bureaucracies, I think notoriously, are very, very dutiful and sometimes perceived to be quite slow. We went through all the processes, we obeyed them all, we took no shortcuts, but we did them all very, very quickly. And I think when you do things fast, sometimes, sometimes you would be better off maybe to take a little bit more time to think about things, but we didn't have that luxury, not when so many people were in need. And in the case of the CSSG,
I apologize. I did give extra time there, but we're way over. Mr. Angus.
Well, thank you both for participating. Thank you, Deputy Minister Fox, for going to Attawapiskat. I really appreciate that. And Madame Kovacevic, thank you for being casual in emails. It's nice to see people who actually talk like human beings. I hope your superiors aren't upset that you were just frank in your conversation. I think it's important. What the Liberals pitched to us is this always came up from the civil service, but the documents show us this came from the top down. I mean, Bill Morneau gets an email from Craig Kielburger for $12 million, and he gives his approval. It wasn't a mistake that it was on that list. It was overturned finally by Katie Telford. The PCO said they did not want this to go ahead, but Bill Morneau did want it to go ahead. I guess my question, just to wrap up here, because the Kielburgers were so tied to the Prime Minister, because they were so tied to Minister Chagger, because they were so tied to Minister Bill Morneau, I think the die was cast from the beginning. So they make lots of claims, those Kielburger boys. I mean, they are very slick. So when they said that they could get 10,000 students, it must have sounded great, but I think due diligence would have asked questions. Can you do this? They claim they had Imagine Canada as a partner. Imagine Canada looked at this and said it was not doable. They did not want to be part of it. But even in June, Imagine Canada is still on the government documents as one of the partners when they weren't. They said they could deliver for Francophones. Only 7% of the people who signed up were Francophone, and only 4% were from Quebec. So that breached the Treasury Board guidelines. So I put it to you, and I'm not blaming you. This was coming from Bill Morneau. This was coming from Minister Chagger's office, and everyone knew the Prime Minister was so tied to the Kielburgers that it put your department, I think, in an impossible situation, and that decisions were made that if we had done due diligence, this scheme would never have gotten off the ground.
Is that for me, sir?
That is for you.
And what is the exact question? Pardon me.
Well, don't you think if you'd double checked on Imagine Canada and the fact that they walked on this, it would have raised alarm bells that the Kielburgers, having fired all their staff in March, were not capable of taking 10,000 of the cohort. They didn't have the partners to do it. They couldn't do it in Quebec. They couldn't do it with Francophones. If you'd done more due diligence, maybe those issues would have been raised and you would not be speaking to our committee right now.
Thanks for that. That may well be the case, sir. And I think that question is probably directed at ESDC, who were the ones that were building the contribution agreement with We Charity. That was not the Department of Finance. And I would also state that your earlier chronology, yet again, Minister Morneau did not approve the 12 million for We, and I was never aware of a correspondence between Mr. Kielburger and Minister Morneau until August when email records were made public.
But it's in Annex 4 that it says the minister has approved $12 million to Employment and Social Development Canada. That's April 21st. It's in the finance minister's documents he approved.
Okay, that's all the time that we have. Colleagues, I have two more people on the speaking list. Monsieur Gourde, who hasn't had a chance to ask any questions, and Madam Shanahan, who has not had a chance to ask any questions. Do both of you want to ask, and is there consent by the committee to go?
If possible, yes.
Okay, I see consent. Then we'll go to Mr. Gourde first for 5 minutes, and then Madam Shanahan for 5 minutes. Mr. Gourde.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Chair. Very quickly, perhaps a question for Ms. Fox. The clerk of the Privy Council said to us that there was a meeting with a lot of stakeholders with respect to this CSSG, the grant. There was there any brainstorming? Did you participate in it? No, I did not participate in it. It was also told to us by the clerk of the Privy Council that there were guests invited from a variety of departments because of their expertise. Did you take part in any of those meetings? The Kielburgers participated with the Privy Council this year. Is that what you're asking? Well, the brothers or representatives of We Charity had participated in these meetings to put forward their ideas before the program was launched. No, I didn't participate, and I wasn't aware. Do you think, Ms. Fox, that further to all your expertise, do you think that We Charity had the capability of deploying the whole program, this $900 million program, according to what you know about the organization? I did look at what they had done. I received a first version in the past, but I looked at it, but I can't give you the details. The department should have had a better organization, or the organization itself? Well, let me just say this. One of the biggest challenges we had was to build the program and to recruit participants. It arose from a pilot project. And given the experience that we had in the past, to face this huge challenge, to find participants and to provide a program on the long term, it was difficult. The organization in question to do so would have to be national, would have to have a digital platform that was active, and would have to have a record of engaging youth that was already established, because it was too quick. We couldn't start from square one. It had to have a record. So, Ms. Fox, when the Prime Minister told the media that he had received advice from his senior officials to choose We Charity for this program, did the advice come from you? Because you seem to be saying that there were lacunae, there were gaps in the organization of We Charity. I didn't say there were gaps. I said there had to be a national program that would be able to engage youth with a digital platform. I gave advice to the Prime Minister, but he got advice from other senior officials. So what I told him was based on my experience with the Youth Corps and a national organization like we would be a consideration for moving forward. But it's not. It was based on my experience, but not the details of the proposal put forward by We Charity. Thank you. It was an option, but it was not a decision. My question for Madam Kovacevic, are we aware of the fact that We Charity got money at the beginning of the program to help it launch the program?
No, I am aware of it now, but those are details that are uniquely in the remit of the Department of ESDC. It has nothing to do with me.
Okay,
yes, but you were aware of the fact that there was an amount of money. How much was it?
I cannot speculate nor remember. You'd have to ask ESDC.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grode. Now on to Madam Shanahan for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. And before I ask the witnesses my questions, I just want to correct the record regarding the Treasury Board approval. We had testimony at OGO, Government Operations, from Kathleen Owens, the Assistant Controller General, saying that in the case of the WE contribution, ESDC officials did consult TBS to determine whether the Canada Student Grant Program could be delivered under the minister's existing authorities or a Treasury Board authority was required. In this case, we determined that it was under the minister's authority. Therefore, the program and the contribution agreement never came to the Treasury Board. The Treasury Board had no role, but as the minister indicated, under the transfer of payment policy, it's the responsibility of the deputy head of the department to make sure that all official languages provisions of the Act are being respected. So I hope that that clarifies. There may have been some misunderstanding before regarding TBS's role. So my question is for Madam Kovacevic. And actually, I'd like to give her the chance. I'd like to give her the chance through you, Chair, to clarify her remarks, her explanation of this $10 million approval and how that happened and how that went down.
I'm sorry, what $10 million
sorry, the $12 million in your questions and the answers that you were giving to Mr. Angus. There seemed to be some mistake or misunderstanding there too about an approval that had happened
right.
With the 900 million. Thank you.
Yes, no, rightfully so. Thank you. So Mr. Angus is referring to an Annex 4, which is in the documents that we submitted to Parliament. And Annex 4 lays out a funding decision, which says a high-level announcement, $900 million, the Minister of ESDC to return with a proposal, and it also has We Charity $12 million. That was never signed by the Minister of Finance. He verbally approved all of it except for the We, and the final decision from the Prime Minister also approved all of it, but not the We Charity part. In the communications product, a backgrounder, I believe it was, there was a typo, if you will, which still listed 912 rather than 900. But in fact, it is $900 million, not 912, and neither the Minister of Finance nor the Prime Minister had signed off on the We 12 million charity at that point in time in advance of the April 22nd announcement. I hope that's clear.
Thank you very much for that clarification. And just a last question, Chair, if I may, I want to ask Mrs. Kovacevic, did she bring her sassy phone to today's meeting?
I think I need to be a little less sassy, but yes, it is here. Thanks for asking.
Keep the sassiness. Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you to today's witnesses.
All right. Thank you very much.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Just
Angus,
before we end for the day, because this question of the $12 million, I think, is really important. If we have it actually in the minister's financial annex that says he signed off on it, he's approved it. We have it listed in the government release, which the member is saying was just a typo. 12 is not a typo. 912 million is not a typo. It's showing that it's still there. It eventually is mentioned in the PCO, where the PCO says they have a problem with it. I think they had a problem.
Chair, excuse me.
I'm not finished, sir. I'm in a point of order, please. Can my colleague wait?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Angus. But
yeah,
please,
this is serious. I think my colleagues have interrupted us enough over the last 40 days. So I'm asking because some of the documents on Annex 4 are blacked out. In one, it says, "Hi, folks. I picked up the package of docs from Bill." That's Bill Morneau. "Let me know which ones are missing. I can track them down." Annex 4, student service grant. He didn't sign anything on this. He just wrote, okay, same as Tyler.
I'm sorry,
so
Chair.
I'm asking, point of order. I'm still on the point of order, Chair.
I know, Mr. Angus, and you know that I've given broad.
I'm asking
room
you if you will ask the finance department to send those documents unredacted regarding this, so we can clarify whether it was a typo or whether, in fact, as it says, he signed off okay for the $12 million. It's a simple thing, but we need to know.
All right. I think the request for documents is on record right now. Madam Clerk, that's permissible. We can make that happen. And colleagues, we're done for the day. Please allow me to thank the witnesses for their patience and fulsome answers. And also, colleagues, we will see you at 11 a.m. on Monday, either virtually or in person. Have a good week.